In this episode, I have the bike PT guru himself, Kevin Schmidt from Pedal PT, located in Portland, Oregon, joining me to discuss all things biking, cycling, and physical therapy. I have so much respect for Kevin because of his story and his passion for helping people enjoy an activity he himself enjoys so much, riding a bike. Kevin lives and breathes biking. It won't take long for you to catch that notion in this podcast. We discuss how to get into biking PT, the basics and the untold secrets of bike fittings, common things with treating bikers, and considerations when it comes to recreation versus performance. Hope you enjoy this one.
The Prehab audio experience will teach you how to take control of your health through knowledge by optimizing performance, promoting longevity, and keeping your movement system in tune. Welcome to your host, the Prehab Guys.
Today we have Kevin Schmidt, owner of Pedal PT, located in Portland, Oregon. Kevin is an expert when it comes to bike-friendly physical therapy. Kevin specializes in bike fitting as well as the clinical management of all types of cyclists on and off the bike. Kevin, it's an honor to have you join the show. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This is great.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited for this one because I was in Portland, Oregon not too long ago at the end of last year. We got to link up. You showed me around. We grabbed a beer. And you told me so much about all things bike-related physical therapy. And I was like, I have to get you on the podcast. You have to share this knowledge with everyone else.
Great.
So, Kevin, just give us a background of how you got to where you are today. Like, how did Pedal PT come about?
Great question. Yeah, so I'll kind of try to compartmentalize it as much as I can. But I'm from Michigan originally. I grew up with cycling. My father was an obsessed cyclist. That's using that term lightly. I was that kid. We were raised with about 3 bikes in all states of disrepair in the house. My dad was just a huge influence in my cycling life. I went to physical therapy school in Michigan, moved out to Portland, Oregon, and kind of just did the usual thing that most of us do when we come out of PT school. We want to take continuing education courses. We want to get manual therapy skills. And so I kind of took a lot of jobs with a lot of great mentors and was able to level up my skills. Ended up kind of getting up into a corporate level management job, working in work comp. My buddy and I opened up 5 clinics in Portland and 1 in Bend, which was great. I was making a lot of money, but unfortunately was in the car a lot. I was stuck in the car sometimes up to 2 hours a day, and just kind of ultimately realized that I needed to make a huge lifestyle shift. I really wasn't treating the patients that I wanted to treat. And so ultimately I made a huge lifestyle change, took about a 40 grand pay cut and took a job about 3 miles away from my house so that I could start bike commuting every day. I live in Portland, Oregon. This is Bike Town, USA. I guess that's debatable, but the infrastructure is set up as such that you can live a life on a bike. And that really sounded awesome to me. And like I said, it kind of brought me back to kind of the times with my dad and his obsessive nature of cycling. And I kind of got into it. And so I took a job 3 miles from my house. And so I started riding my bike every day, treating patients. I just took a kind of a staff PT job at a private practice about 3 miles from my house and started riding my bike every day. And boy, it was just a life-changing experience. It was amazing. I felt so much better, so much more clear-headed. The exercise every day was a great way to kind of start my day as well as unwind at the end of the day if you had a long day. Unfortunately, I started getting neck pain and I started getting back pain. And mind you, I'm only riding 3 miles a day. So this all of a sudden kind of started to mess with me a little bit because, I'm a physical therapist. I know about neck pain. I know about back pain. Unfortunately, I couldn't figure out why my back was hurting, why my neck was hurting, and I'm only riding 3 miles a day. So I started kind of figuring out, like, what the heck is this thing called bike fitting? There was a few courses out there. There really wasn't that much knowledge out there that I could gain from this, as I really wanted to ultimately just selfishly remedy my own neck pain so I could continue to ride bikes. Took a few courses, started kind of developing my own bike fit program at the clinic there, and was able to remedy my own symptoms. Interestingly enough, I would go to the bike shop and I would ask these guys, and they kept raising my handlebars and doing things for that. And it ultimately kind of made my neck worse. And I remember one of these times being in the bike shop, talking to these guys, and I was like, what do you think's going on with my neck? What the heck? And they're like, dude, how the hell should I know? I'm not a physical therapist. And I was like, all of a sudden, the light bulb went off in my head, and I was just like, wait a minute, how come us as healthcare providers, or as people that are, work with bodies all day long, the knowledge that we have, the ability to evaluate and diagnose and treat neck pain, how come we go to the bike shop to ask for advice about remedying pain? Like, these guys are wrench, they're great with wrenching and using hands-on with the bike, but they don't really know much about our bodies at all. And so I realized that I was like, man, this seems like this is such, like, it's kind of one of those, like, yeah, that totally makes sense that our best bike fitters are physios, because we can actually check out the body and actually figure out where the pain's coming from, and then be able to apply that to the bike. And so that kind of started my whole journey. I started the Bike Fit program at the clinic, finding ways to be able to combine physical therapy with Bike Fit, finding ways to get it reimbursed through health insurance. And then in 2010, my father passed away unexpectedly. He had cancer, multiple myeloma. And so he ended up passing away. And then it wasn't but 6 months later, my grandmother passed away. And those two massive kind of huge shifts in my life was kind of a kick in the ass for me to kind of realize that, like, you know what? Life is too short, man. You got to take risks. You got to go for things. You can't just kind of stand stationary. And the job that I was at, I was kind of, I was like, I know how to run clinics. I've already run clinics. I know how to open clinics. And so I just kind of took a major leap of faith and just decided I was going to open this bike-friendly physical therapy office, of which everybody laughed at me and thought it was a crazy idea and that would never succeed because you're limiting the people that you're going to see, et cetera, et cetera. Well, fast forward 8 years now. We opened up in 2012. We've been open for 8 years. I've got 2 other PTs that work for me that also fit bikes, that perform PT. We're just in a 1,500 square foot space. And so it's been just such a wonderful, rewarding experience, and an ability for us to really share our values, where our values are, because in order to work at the clinic, every single employee must ride their bike to work. You are not allowed to drive a car to the office. That's just kind of the culture that we've created. And if we're going to be working with cyclists, helping cyclists, we need to be able to kind of practice what we preach. So anyway, that's the long-winded answer. But yeah, basically, frustrated car commuter turned bike commuter turned frustrated bike commuter, turned bike physical therapist guy.
I love it. It's such a good story. And
yeah, man.
Whenever I do these podcasts and I hear people's stories, it's just everything comes back to filling a void, and it's always firsthand experience. So I love that story, and I can relate to it because my first physical therapy rotation as a student, I was placed down in La Jolla, San Diego, and I found a spot. I got set up with a friend, and I could ride a bike to work every single day. And it was the best experience in the world. It was like practicing mindfulness and just starting the day with something active. You can't be on your phone. You have to be very present. And then, like you said, finishing the day with that. I mean, I remember I had to go to like the student health center at the end of my clinical rotation before starting classes again. And like, that was the best my blood pressure has ever been. I just felt so relaxed, and I was like, all right,
man,
there is the secret sauce in riding and commuting with a bike every day. So I hope to do that soon. And then I just want to mention your space. So it's what part of Portland exactly is your clinic located in?
Yeah, so Portland is kind of divided into quadrants, and so we are in the kind of inner southeast, or kind of the Division Clinton area. We are lucky enough to actually our office is right on a major bike boulevard. And for those of you that don't know what that means, it's basically just, what we call a protected greenway, where essentially bicycles can take the full lane. The cars are only allowed to drive 20 miles an hour. The specific street that we are on is called Clinton Avenue. It is one of the busiest bikeways in America, believe it or not. It sees anywhere between 3,000 to 4,000 bicycle trips every day. Most of those are commuters, actually. So getting around to the city, Portland has the highest percentage of bike commuters in the nation. I think it's somewhere around 8 to 10% ridership of bike commuting every day. So yeah,
and I can attest for that because I stopped by. The clinic is awesome. Like if you're interested in bike related physical therapy, or you need someone, I've even referred a couple patients to you, because we'll talk about it more during this call, but I need the dummy for PT bike related thing. Like, you got to break it down for me, but I've
Yeah.
referred patients to you, and I was like, you have to check out this place because if you are all about bikes, I mean, your clinic, it was just awesome. And you can tell us more during the show,
Yeah,
but,
sure, man. Yeah.
and then, yeah, we grabbed a beer and all you saw were bikers going by. And I'm like, dude, you hit it on the nail. You know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So then,
Location, 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 you know?
yeah, big time. And then, yeah, so in your clinic, I remember one of the things that you wanted to highlight, and let's transition to that now,
Yeah.
is for any physical therapist that's tuning in or anyone that works with bikers, like you brought up, it's because I've treated bikers and I'm like, man, I just feel like you need a bike fitting, or like, I wish that you could bring in your bike and I could just see how are you situated and how are you set up on that bike. But even if they did that and they came in, I'm like, I have no idea where they even go. And I'm the type of person that I like to play my strengths and I acknowledge my weaknesses. That's why I just refer people to you. And I'm like, just
Sure.
reach
Hey,
out
yeah.
to Kevin.
You gotta know what you're good at, you know? Sure.
But for someone that wants to get into it, where do they even start? Can you just let's take a few steps back and like, what is step one for anyone who's interested working with bikers?
Yeah. I mean, I think the number one thing that it comes down to it is that you have to be on your bike. As a
Hmm.
PT, I think step one is start riding your bike. Start experiencing what your bike feels like on the bike. Start experiencing some pain on the bike. Start to kind of understand how that repetitive motion of pedaling and that prolonged posture, how that affects your body. I mean, I think that would be a huge starting point, is just starting to put your PT cap on and ride your bike and start to understand how the muscles work, how things happen when we get fatigued, how different positioning can affect what you feel. In addition to that, like I said, as far as learning goes, there is a lot of great, evaluation techniques on how to do bike fit. And if you Google
Hmm.
bike fitting, you're going to get a lot of those. 95% of those are, realize that 95% of those are being created by bike industry. What I mean by that, that would be your major bike manufacturers like Specialized and things like that. They create systems, and they create systems to teach bike shop employees how to do bike fitting. Interesting enough, that those same systems basically are created. This is going to be a secret to some of you, or maybe not for others, but those systems are created and designed to sell product. What do I mean by that? So the old additive is that you got hand pain, you need new handlebars. You
Hmm.
got foot pain, you need new shoes. You need new cleats. You need things in your cleats. It's a system designed to upsell, and that the false belief is that equipment solves all issues. And as we know as physical therapists, that the body can adapt, the body can change, et cetera, et cetera. The bike shop employee doesn't have that ability. So most of your educational courses out there these days are going to be driven around a system that promotes the selling of equipment. And I'm here to tell you, you don't need that.
Yeah.
In my mind, in my heart, I really believe that roughly 70 to 75% of all equipment sold during your average bike shop bike fit is unnecessary to achieve pain-free cycling.
I mean, it makes total sense. I've treated
Yeah,
bikers in the past, and you ask them, it's like, hey, well, what have you tried to make this better? Or what have you already explored? And one of the most common responses is, oh, well, I got a new bike. And then they're
yeah,
relating
there you
it
go.
to, oh, well, I had an excuse for getting a new bike, but they've always tried new equipment. It's the
Sure.
same for me. Like, I'm a big golfer, and you can never blame the clubs. Like, yeah, go out, go buy new clubs, do all that. But if it's your swing pattern, you know what I mean?
Right,
So that makes total
right.
sense. So then,
Yeah, as
okay, if
we
it's not the equipment, then where do we dive into it?
well, here's the deal, man. If you look at cycling, so let's take cycling all together, everything about cycling. That's roughly 10% equipment, i.e. the bike, 90% rider.
Hmm.
So we have to have expertise on 90% of that, which is the body and the body, and starting to understand. There are specific principles you have to also understand about bike fitting. Like I said, to kind of finish my statement on training, I actually, because there is very little knowledge out there, especially for the physical therapist that's interested in working with cyclists, I actually created an online course platform to teach physical therapists, basically, like you said, bike physical therapy, bicyclists for dummies. It's pretty much, that's kind of it. It starts from the very ground level and teaches the PT that's interested or passionate about cycling, step by step, how to kind of start gaining these skills and the principles that you need to kind of work to be able to help your cyclists and help your clients out. So, and it becomes a wonderful, in this day and age, it becomes a really wonderful cash-based option. It's also a lot of times a gateway drug to get people in for PT services. Just a really great angle.
And we'll include that in the show notes, and I'll be sure to be following that link. And unintended, but now, like you said earlier, I mean, it's such a common phrase in the PT world of, you got to always have your PT hat on, but I'm going to suggest to you add in the course somewhere that you'll be teaching people how to put a PT helmet on.
Yeah, they're good. Very, of course. We got to practice safety first.
We got to put our PT helmet on.
PT helmet, yeah. I like
so
it.
Then,
well done.
What would you say are probably some of the common things that you see that you're managing and dealing with on a daily basis with bikers?
Sure. I mean, your top 3 areas of pain in a cyclist is generally, back pain, neck pain, knee pain, followed shortly by saddle area pain. And basically anywhere that we touch the bike. I mean, hand numbness, wrist pain, knee pain, foot numbness, tingling and numbness in the feet. Like I said, the whole saddle thing becomes its own kind of Pandora's box as well. But the majority of people that we see is going to be knee pain, neck pain, back pain. And that can be mid-back or lower back pain. Very, very, very common stuff in the bike fit world. So.
And because your clinic is very biker friendly focused, I mean, I'm sure that's where a handful of your business is coming from. Can you tell us a little bit about how it's uniquely different, how you're working with these patients and clients, but also how is it similar to traditional musculoskeletal physio?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the way that we're different is, like I said, number one, we are cyclists. And so we speak the language. We talk the talk. Just like in any sport, there's a lingo and talk that goes on. So even our front office receptionist has to know about clipless pedals and toe clips and saddles and things like that. So that's one thing. Our clinic is also the very first PT clinic in America to be actually a gold certified bike friendly business from the League of American Cyclists. It takes a year to actually get that certification. We're the only PT clinic in America to have that. So we have indoor bike parking. We have all kinds of tools and things to help, changing areas. So that's kind of, I think, how we're different. And I think that relates, the people that ride every day kind of get it. They see us out on the road riding. How are we like everybody else? I mean, essentially, you have to understand, when we're physical therapists, we're providing an intervention. We're having them come back and we're seeing how they did with that intervention. So boil that down. That could be managing back pain. Well, let's try a prone extension. Okay, let me see in a few days. Come back. How's your back pain? Oh, it's better. Okay, great. Let's progress that. The same thing kind of goes with bike fit. And I think bike fit becomes very intimidating just because you're using tools. You have to know how to use torque wrenches. You have to understand the pieces, parts of the bike. But the intervention that you provide is just like PT. So someone says, well, what if I do a bike fit and someone's back pain worsens? I was like, well, bring them back in there and do the opposite of what you just did. So if you raise their saddle, maybe lower their saddle.
Yeah.
It's just like PT. That's why they call it practice. You have to kind of, in my course, I think I talk about the learning curve mindset. And the learn curve mindset means that when you first start something new, you're going to kind of suck at it. And you just have to be okay with that. Like your first 5 to 10 bike fits are going to kind of suck, and you're going to be very awkward and you're going to be very bumbling around. But you start to get those people, you start to get the people the results that they want, your confidence increases. And I know I've heard you say it many, many times before, you got to get your reps. Yeah. And we just have to not be intimidated to take our lumps, get your reps in. But I think that's a lot of times the biggest, the thing that's intimidating for PTs is dealing with this machine. We're really good at bodies. We're really not good at using Allen wrenches and hex wrenches and all this kind of stuff. We don't even know half the time what can be moved on the bike, let alone whether it should be moved. And number 3, how much do I move it? So that's kind of where it becomes kind of we always kind of talk, just like PT, it's like there's science, but there's also kind of an art form that goes with that too. So,
Totally. And that's how my brother and I, we're brothers, but we're very different. That when we were growing up, because I rode bikes my entire life growing up. I mean, that's how I got around everywhere. And we went back in the woods and we would do jumps or, mess around. And then we transitioned to skateboards. But with bikes and the skateboard, it was like my brother was always taking it apart. Never looked at a manual, just grabbed tools, took it apart, messed around with it. Versus me, I was like, no way. Like, you're going to do that stuff and you're going to show me stuff. I like to follow manuals, and I like to, so
Right.
that's how we're just a little bit uniquely different. But I think it all goes back to your number one piece of advice, and it's just get out there and ride,
Right.
because if you don't want to be awkward in that first bike fitting, or you don't want it to be very clear that you have no idea what you're doing and it's your first time doing it, then you need to bike yourself, and you need to mess around with your own bike. And then, like you
Absolutely.
said, oh, okay, now this is how my back feels with the saddle high versus, oh, okay, I can see how maybe my back would get sore if I had the saddle really low or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that
Right.
makes total sense. I guess my next question for you then is, for myself, I don't have any equipment, at least that I know of. You may educate me here. But
Yeah.
I don't have any equipment in my clinic that I know of that I would feel super comfortable with doing a bike fitting, or at least saying, hey, if you can bring your bike in, let's bring your bike in and let's just
Mhm.
see how you're positioned on it. So what would you suggest is the bare bones, the minimal things that, if there is anything, that you need in order to do your first bike fitting?
Yeah. That's great. And for that very reason, I've created a list, an essential list for any PT clinic that wants to start a bike fit clinic. It's just a list, but your real basic things. So number one, we need to find a way to get the person to be able to pedal on the bike and have the bike not ride away from you. So you need a type of stationary bike trainer.
Yeah.
There's 101 out there that you can get. You also need to have what we call a skewer or a trainer skewer. The skewer is the piece that fits in the rear wheel that connects the wheel to the frame. Oftentimes you need to take that out and put in what we call a training skewer, which allows it to fit into the trainer. The skewer is typically a little bit longer. Nowadays, there's also what we call through axle, which is a whole new ball game since the onset of gravel biking and the different types of cycling is what we call a through axle, and they have through axle skewers as well. And those basically fit in there and extend out away from the bike or from the sides of the bike that allow those two ends of the trainer to fit to the side. And then that allows, and there's usually a type of resistance unit that you can kind of put on the wheel. You then just need to level out the bike. We just use little wood platforms just to kind of raise the wheel up to match the back wheel. So you want to just be able to put the bike in the trainer, level the bike. That's pretty much all you need. And then you might need a set of hex wrenches, like anything from 3 millimeter all the way. I mean, your main ones are going to be your 4, 5, and 6 millimeter hex wrenches. You're going to be able to pretty much accomplish a lot of that just from those pieces alone.
Yeah.
So hex wrenches, bike trainer, it gets much more complicated than that. But that's a lot of times all you need. And a goniometer, you have that at the clinic. You can measure angles. And so we kind of teach you how to do that. I think the world of bike fit has become so complicated, and so, if you've ever seen pictures of bike fit before, they have all this motion capture and all these angles and all this stuff everywhere. It doesn't have to be like that. Us as PTs, we see motion all day long. That's all we do is look at motion, and we can see knee valgus. We can see all kinds of things. We can look at width of stance. All those things that we look at when the person's not on bike, we can apply that to bike fit.
Yeah.
And so, things like that. So basically trainer, hex wrenches, maybe a plumb bob, maybe a goniometer, a level. Gosh, that you really don't need much more than that if you have, or understand the concepts. And ultimately, it really comes down to, just like in PT, we're chasing symptoms. The thing is like, if somebody comes in and they have, like, let's say they have, foot pain, I'm going to go to their foot and their pedal first. Like, let's see what's going on there, because oftentimes that's the cause. I'm not going to adjust their handlebars to try to fix their foot pain. The reason they're there, and the 90% of the people that get bike fit are there because of pain. And that's why it was so, this light bulb moment for me with the bike shop is just like, if 90 to 95% of people look for bike fit due to pain, why are we going to the person that knows nothing about pain or the evaluation of pain or the assessment of pain? Doesn't that make sense? Why don't we go to the physical therapist who understands the general causes of pain, and we can apply that to one's bike fit? That just kind of made more sense to me. So,
Yeah, totally. And then, so I'm curious, I'm even, that was a great list of stuff that you named. And I think that's going to get you really far, because now you can at least watch the person actually ride, but would you say, even starting out, if you're just concerned about, the limitation is you would only see static posture, but at least the person could bring in their bike and you could prop up the wheels, or just, set up the environment where they could be seated and supported on the bike without moving. And that's
Right.
not even a bad start, right?
And they can pedal backwards.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
that's,
yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of times too. We'll get to this in a second, but I invented our very own proprietary bike fit trainer stand that's actually made for bike fitting. Anyway, we can get into that in a second, but we used to do when bikes wouldn't fit in the trainer, and what's happening is that most of these newer bikes with larger wheels, larger tires, don't fit in these general, everyday trainers. So we would do what we call the door jamb bike fit, which is basically like somebody gets in the door jamb, holds on either side,
Oh, nice.
get on their bike, they can pedal backwards, so we can still adjust positioning based on, cleats and clipless pedals and moving things around. We can do a lot of the bike fit with them pedaling backwards, believe it or not. Looking at posture, positioning, saddle positioning, up or down, tilt, fore, aft, all that kind of stuff too. So yeah, so I was trying to get away from that because it just kind of looks kind of janky when you're like, come on in, here's our specialized bike PT clinic.
Yeah.
All the time. All right, get in the doorway, pedal backwards. It just looks kind of janky. So, but like I said, as PTs, we have to be creative. We have to be innovative. We can't just, this is how I do this all the time. You have to make it work for every person. So,
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure that you travel and you can't always bring your trainer. So I'm sure that you've had to use that in the past where it's like, oh, hey, well, we can do this at least. So that's great. I definitely want to cover that at the end because that was one of the coolest things that you ever showed me. I was just like completely baffled at that when you showed me that in the clinic, that proprietary bike training fitter. But so now that we've covered the basics of the fitting and like at a very basic level, because I'm sure that could even be 2 podcasts dedicated to that.
Multiple, yes.
What would you say are the most common and important questions that you're always asking bikers during an evaluation? And, whether that's like what's making it worse or better, you can let us know. But then also, what would you say are probably the most common things that you're tackling intervention-wise?
Sure. Yeah. I think the number one thing we have to realize with bike fit is that bike fit is based on time, or I should say symptoms are based on time. Now, let me explain that. So if we were to be, I always use the example when I give talks, I always say, if I were to give an example, like if I were to grab this like little clown bike, like the clown bikes, like ride on these little tiny bikes, that's obviously not a good bike for a long distance ride. But if that person were to ride that bike for, let's say, 2 minutes and then get off the bike and do that every day, they probably wouldn't cause an injury. It's not really that much time. If we were to take that same person and say, all right, you need to ride this clown bike now 10 miles. Like, is that person going to develop some aches and pains? You betcha. So oftentimes it ultimately leads to time. So my most common question would be when do symptoms occur during the ride? Typically, if symptoms occur very early in the ride, so let's say someone says, I get on here and within 5 minutes, my back is screaming. That to me says there is a very significant problem in bike fit positioning that needs to be addressed, a large amplitude adjustment. So a large movement.
Yeah.
If someone were to come in and they say, well, when do your symptoms and they say, at mile 72, my knee starts to start to get a little sore right here. That adjustment on that bike might be 2 to 3 millimeters.
Okay.
Because based on time, the amount of time and repetition, the more repetition, the greater the chance of that injury. The best analogy to use is if you were to take your fingernail and just scratch your skin, all you podcast people, if you're listening to this right now, you can try this if you'd like. Go ahead and take that fingernail, scratch your skin, and go ahead and scratch that. If you were to scratch it 25 times, it's going to be fine. It's just a scratch. But if you go ahead and scratch that skin 25,000 times, you're going to break through the skin and it's going to be bleeding. You can try that if you'd like, but bike fit is kind of the same way. It's all about, just like everything else in training, it's about volume, it's about capacity, and it's about tissue tolerance. And all we're trying to do is solve the riddle because it's so much repetition that over time, sometimes that's what can trigger injury. And so if a symptom comes on earlier, we know that there's probably something drastic. If there's something coming on much later, the little tiny nuances, teeny tiny things might need to be adjusted, or we ultimately will look at them also off the bike, or what are things that they can do off the bike. The most common things that we tend to see in the clinic when it comes to adjustment of the bike oftentimes has to do with saddle tilt. And what do I mean by tilt? Tilt meaning nose up or nose down. Commonly, people are riding a saddle that's generally too high. This is a generality. Maybe it's a West Coast thing. Maybe it's a Portland thing. Most people come in with their saddle too high. So the initial way that they try to respond to that is they say, I feel this nose of the saddle. This hurts in my undercarriage riding this bike. So the saddle drops nose down.
That makes sense.
What happens though when we drop that saddle nose down, we are now not on a level surface. And so what that does is it dumps all the weight forwards onto the handlebars, onto our hands, onto our wrists. That ultimately then when I am pedaling, I am not on a level surface. So each pedal stroke, you slide forward, or I sometimes call it the typewriter. Maybe your audience might be too young for typewriters, but back in the day, you would type this and it would go, and then you have to shift this whole thing back to start the typing again. Same thing happens in cycling. If your saddle is nose down, you'll pedal, you'll start sliding forward, and eventually you got to slide your butt back. And so you're constantly, therefore your pedal stroke is not the same each repetition because you're sliding and you're moving. So we don't have consistency, and that can ultimately lead to pain. 9 times out of 10, if someone comes in with wrist pain or hand pain, the problem is not the handlebars, is not that they need new gloves, is not that they need new hand wraps, it's their saddle is nose down, dumping all the way to their hand.
Totally.
So that's when we come in. You go to the bike shop though, they're gonna be like, you need gloves, bro.
Yeah.
You need a new handlebar. You need all this. When it's just like they come in and their saddle's like 45 degrees nose down. You're like, did anybody look at this? They're like, well, my problem is my hands. I was like, I know.
Yeah.
So,
It totally makes sense. It's, it's similar to running or anything where it's very repetitive. It's a matter of when it comes to these orthopedic and these musculoskeletal injuries and issues, it's overload or it's overexposure. So it's crazy that you even mentioned that even like a few millimeters can just change maybe, not overexposing a certain area. So that's
absolutely
crazy.
Yeah. It's so true. And that's what's so funny is that people get down there and just like make 2 little adjustments to the cleats and they're like, my pain's gone.
Yeah.
They're like, you didn't even do anything. I was like, I know it's really subtle, but little cleat rotations, things like that. I mean, but that's kind of gets into the, getting your reps in and starting to recognize, but we're ultimately, again, in the PT, we're always thinking about symptoms first.
Mm-hmm.
What can cause this symptoms? What can cause front of knee pain? Oh, it can be from this. I need to check this, et cetera, et cetera. Oftentimes we'll look at how a person, so taking knee pain, we're going to do that off the bike screen first. We're going to do so much evaluation of their body even before we see them on the bike that by the time we actually get them on the bike, we already have a good hypothesis of what's causing the problem even before we get them on the bike. And sure enough, we get them up there and we're like, oh, that's exactly what we see.
Yeah. Makes sense.
like how somebody squats, if they're that person that squats and their knees go past their toes and they raise up on their toes and their heels come off the ground, and that's typically how they're going to pedal.
Yeah.
So sometimes by teaching someone proper squat mechanics or deadlift mechanics, it also teaches them better posture on the bike and better pedaling mechanics. The key is I think the whole thing comes down to is that people are like, it's as easy as riding a bike. I mean, I think I've said that statement. So the key is the ability to ride a bike and not tip over on it is
Mm-hmm.
much different than the skill set and the skills required to be an excellent, prolific, efficient cyclist. There's so much skill involved in this than just hopping on it, pedaling, don't think about anything. Like, these people that are high level cyclists are amazing, just neuromuscular adaptation and the ability to pedal well. There's so much to that. So, yeah.
So then I'm curious because, the average biker that comes in, the recreational biker, they're going to love you if you make an adjustment and you help get them out of pain. But there's no doubt that I'm sure you're working with high-level cyclists on different types of surfaces. Is there any pushback, or what are some of the things that you commonly deal with when you're trying to educate them and recommend some adjustments for some of these high-level cyclists that are like, whoa, dude, can I trust that? Are you sure if we should do that? Because now we're getting into the performance aspects.
Correct. Great question. It's just like typically your type AAA personality, anybody you'd be treating. It doesn't even have to do with bike fit. So what I like to do is I like to give that person credit first. So if they come in, they're high-level cyclists, and we see some humdingers of cyclists, the first thing we always talk about is Phil Burt is a physical therapist. He's, I think, from the UK, and he's a bike fitter and a physical therapist. And in his book, he talks about the concept of what we call I think it's micro absorbers and macro absorbers, or micro adapters and macro and micro adapters. The macro adapter people are the people that they can probably hop on any bike and it doesn't really matter. It could not even be their bike, and they could probably go ride that 60, 70 miles and not have pain. That's just kind of who they are. Then we have like the Princess and the Pea type of people that are like, if you move their saddle forward by 3 millimeters, they cry out, I have no power now. And so what we do is we have to understand that each person and personality flows into that kind of that pendulum of micro versus macro. And what I like to do is if we get someone and we make a 3 millimeter adjustment and they scream, I have no power, then I say, oh, you're obviously a micro adjuster, a micro adapter. Let's move that back and let's further the conversation, because just like anything else, we have to, they're there because for what they want. They've got their goals. If we really think it's important, then we'll be like, you'll get this down. But I think just explaining them the concept of the micro versus macro, and it's a personality thing, it's all different. That's kind of where we go with those guys, because sometimes you have to make little tiny adjustments, but you can always put it back.
Yeah.
Measure the bike beforehand. And therefore, if something crazy happens, you can always go back.
Yeah.
It's just like anything else. I think it's just managing personalities is
Totally
really the trick. And that's us as PTs kind of have to be chameleons to, the people that are just like, you get that one patient that like, I want to know about my disc injury. No, I want to see a picture. I want to see everything. I want to see the literature backing this up. And then you have the other patient that's just like, my back hurts. I trust you. I'll just do whatever you say. It's kind of the same thing in the bike fit world too, so.
Totally.
And a lot of times what I always tell people is I was like, hey, just like any intervention, we're going to make some bike fit adjustments. Your job is then to go ride the bike and report back to me.
Yeah.
If it feels great. A lot of times people go out, they leave the clinic and they're like, I don't know about this adjustment. They go out there and they're like, I just got a new king of the mountain on this new climb. Obviously it's working. Thanks. It's just, I always kind of say the proof is in the pudding, and it's the same thing in PT. Most of the time people don't care why. I think bike fitters love to just hate on each other because they're like, oh, that's totally crappy position. What the whole point is, the only person you're trying to impress is the person that's in front of you. You're not trying to impress other bike fitters, and the hater's going to hate thing. It just happens all the time in the bike fit world. So I think I always warn people about that,
Yeah. And you hit it on the nail. Like just PTs, we just love to bicker back and forth, but is that bickering helping the person that's in front of you? It's like save them the soapbox. And I love it. There's so many different solutions to get the same outcome. And, it's just, you're getting a read on the person and you're getting a read on the situation. And it honestly may be, okay, I could do this and this would work for this person, but then there's something completely different that you have to use with someone else. So, and it's trial and error. Ultimately, I tell people in the clinic all the time, it's like, this is gonna wax and wane. It's gonna come in waves. There's gonna be good days that you like me, and there's potentially gonna be bad days that you don't like me. But there's only one way to find out, and we're gonna see if this works. So I'm glad to hear that that's in the bike fitting stuff, because honestly, I feel completely completely clueless when it comes to bike stuff. But I already feel so much better now. So with that being, I already feel so much better.
We're gonna get a whole piece. Yeah, that's great. Good.
I know. I'm kind of fired up for the next biker to come in. I'm like, oh, I know what to do. Here, get in the doorway.
That's right. Yeah. Grab your doorway, man. Yeah, you got it. So, yeah.
So let's transition into that super unique and cool device that you showed me, and then we'll wrap it up from there.
Yeah, totally, man. So like I said, as they say, out of frustration leads to innovation. We do bike fitting. So your average bike fitter, bike fit clinic sees road bicyclists, maybe a commuter here and there. We see everything. So what do I mean by that? So we see mountain bikes. We see e-bikes. So that's kind of these growth markets of e-bikes, gravel bikes, cargo bikes. So the bikes with the big box feet, the giant boxes. Some of these bikes weigh 75 pounds. So we see those. We see hand bikes, recumbent bikes, tandems, anything that you can possibly imagine. But most of these bikes are larger bikes with 29-inch wheels and 3-inch tires and all this kind of stuff. So fat bikes, we do bike fits on everything. We say if you can ride it, we will fit you on it. So what we ended up finding out is that we were using there's a brand called Kinetic, a Kinetic trainer, which is most of your PTs are going to use that. It works fairly well. we would break them. We would go through about 2 a year because they would break because A, they just weren't designed to take heavier riders or heavier bikes. So that was a big problem. Number 2, there's not a trainer on the market that takes all wheel sizes, all axle sizes. And so we basically just kind of developed this. We luckily had a client of ours who is kind of like the Benjamin Franklin of his generation. Like he's an engineer, he's a welder, he builds custom pieces parts for John Deere tractors. So I just one time reached out to him and said, have you ever thought about building a bike trainer stand that, they could take these heavy bikes, they could take every single wheel size, every single axle size. Have you ever thought about that? And he's like, oh my God, this would be so easy to do. So we went through a prototype or two. So now we kind of came up with the trainer stand called the Portlander. And it basically takes every wheel size, all axle sizes. It takes fat bikes. It takes Bromptons, which are the little tiny fold-up bikes. It takes every bike. And it's also rated to take over 500 pounds of weight. The trainer itself weighs about 50 pounds. So this thing is built. It is not tippy. A friend of mine does carbon repair. There's one major group here in town that does carbon repair. And they say the amount of bikes that they have to repair from bikes tipping in a bike trainer to break the dropouts is so much more than you would ever think. So this is a trainer designed to be very stable, very heavy duty, can take any bike. And so even if we have riders that weigh 300 pounds, we're able to get them on the bike to achieve pain-free cycling. And so that's kind of been really fun with that. And so we've sold a few of these out and around the country. These are all kind of built to make. They're all hand built. Every piece is handmade, hand lathed. I mean, it's a very laborious thing, but so it's been really, really fun. So we know that anybody that rolls in, we know we can get them on this trainer because it's just above and beyond anything out there on the market today. So.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like it. It was one of the coolest things that I've ever seen. So
awesome, man. Yeah.
For anyone in the Portland area, if you bike, you have to check out Kevin's spot. So Kevin, this was awesome. Thank you so much.
Awesome,
I already feel way more confident and fired up to handle any biker that walks in the door.
Cool.
For anyone that's tuning in, how can they find you? How can they contact you? How can they learn about your course? Give us the spiel.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So I'm most active probably on Instagram. My handle is Pedal PT. That's all one word. The clinic Instagram is pedal_PT. We also have what we call the Pedal PT Online Academy. That is also on Instagram. All of those have links to our courses. We have the Pedal PT Online Academy. We also do have an in-person teaching event for physical therapists coming up in June called Pedal PT Palooza. The entire month of June in Portland is called Pedal Palooza, where every single day of the week is a certain bikey event, culminating in the World Naked Bike Ride at the end of the month. So we decided it would be a fun weekend to have the Pedal PT Palooza, which is June 12th, 13th, 14th as well. But that's probably the best way. And before I finish, I want to do one last thing. I want to define pain-free cycling. I think this is a key component that your audience needs to hear too, because cycling inherently is about suffering. The more that you ride bikes and you ride centuries and I'm getting ready to ride Dirty Kanza, which is a 200-mile race. It's about suffering. Now, the key is there's a key term in there that we tend to use is that if you're suffering with the pain on a bike, that is okay. That's fine, because you can make it stop. If you are climbing a hill and you are hurting, you are breathing hard, your muscles are aching, you can stop and you can turn off the pain. If you're suffering from the pain, that is not okay. And that is what us as physical therapists and bike fitters are out to fix. So if every pedal stroke you get a steering pickaxe into your knee with every pedal stroke, that is pain. That's something that we can help. So I thought that would just be one last thing we clarify, because people are like, cycling's all about pain. It is if you're suffering with it. If you're suffering from it, that's not okay. And that's kind of where we fit in to make sure that people can make themselves suffer if you want to, but you can not be suffering from it. So anyway.
I love that. I'm going to use that with patience, because it's inherently not an easy task. And I think education is going to go so far with setting expectations on the first visit with what we can do, what we can help with, what we can help with, versus maybe just biking isn't for you. All right, Kevin, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. And I hope everyone else enjoys this.
Great. Thanks so much, Greg.
I don't know about you, but I'm pretty fired up for the next biker that walks in the door. I love Kevin. The guy comes with so much energy, and like I said, he is so passionate about working with bikers, cyclists, you name it. If it comes in 2 wheels, even 1 wheel, Kevin's the guy to go to and to help you out. I really hope that you enjoyed listening to this podcast with Kevin and I. Please rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast. It would absolutely mean the world to us. Please post to social media you listening to this. Take a screenshot, tag the Prehab guys, tag the Prehab audio experience, and we will definitely share this. Leave a comment. Let us know what else you want to hear or who you want us to interview, and we'll do it. All right, take care.